Sorry, bud. Not this year. Anyways, hello everyone. Welcome back to the J4U Film Awards Year 3. We're in 2020. Happy New Year, happy new decade, happy new all the different things. We're in a new decade, new time, a new year for celebrating films of all kinds. And I'm joined here with my wonderful technician, Nick.
Hello everybody, how you guys doing? Glad to be here.
He's gonna be helping out as he has done for the past 2 years with all of these streams. It's gonna be a fun time, it's gonna be a great time, and I cannot wait for you guys to see the rest of it. But, before we start that, a quick monologue, a quick reflection on this last year of film, and this last decade, really. It's the end of an era, a new era to begin next, and it's gonna be an interesting time for all of us. But there's been so many interesting films and so many exciting films, and honestly, I'm kind of glad we started this off before, award season started to really kick in, because you remember last year with Golden Globes, I was sitting here looking like a drunken mess. That was a fun time. Everyone remembers that, probably. But we've got so many great films, so many wonderful films from all over the world, really. This was like a great year for foreign language films. It was a great year for some really interesting genre-defying kind of styles of films. It's been a bit of a crazy one, gotta say, but it's just so exciting to see where it all goes from here, because, remember how we started off this year? As all years, January was sort of a slump, but it started to really pick itself up, and now look where we are now, discussing some really genuinely fascinating films, and honestly, I hope we can get that energy to next year, this next decade, the next few decades, and just for how long we have on planet Earth. I don't know, say 3-4 more decades, iffy, I don't know, somewhere in there. Anyways, no more dilly-dallying, as I like to say. It is time. It is time for the awards, the announcing of the awards, with our first being Best Visual Effects. The nominees, first for Best Visual Effects, the nominees are Alita Battle Angel, Avengers Endgame,
Okay, Thor, hit me.
The Irishman,
Where you from?
Philly.
Oh, you from Philly?
Yeah.
Ah. Where you hang out there?
Callahan's, Hibachi Club.
Detective Pikachu,
I know you can't understand me, but put down the stapler or I will electrocute you.
Ad Astra, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Ah, look at that. Wasn't that some lovely footage there? Also, a quick mention before we get this next award started. We now have chat on here. Or, here.
You're right the first time.
I was right the first time, sorry. It's just a little bit laggy there. But, we've got chat because last year had some pretty golden moments, I would say, in terms of the chat. So I kind of want to preserve that this year because it was gone when it finally actually officially posted. So I want to preserve that because I feel like this will be a fun one as well. But anyways, no dilly-dallying yet again. The winner for Best Visual Effects is... It's going to be a little bit awkward because this new microphone's a bit big, so... The winner is... The Irishman. Now, this is going to be a bit of an interesting one to kind of explain because there's been a lot of bigger sort of a direct effects-driven films this year. I mean, you saw Star Wars, Avengers Endgame, and so it's kind of not the obvious choice with The Irishman, but it's one of the few films where I'd say like its visual effects are very, very integral to its like story, to the entire film as a whole, honestly, because for one thing, you know, de-aging effects have not always been great. They have been kind of considered something we would see as, like, uncanny valley sort of thing here and there. And, I mean, you've seen, like, Rogue One, of course. But this was one of the first times where not only was it done well, but it had genuine purpose behind it. Because it's not just there for, you know, like a quick cameo or something like that. It's for the passage of time of the film's themes and that sort of thing presented through, like, the de-aging effects. And there's been some debate on if they are great. But the way that I see it is they were noticeable at first, mostly just because it's like, oh my god, a new version of these actors, a younger version. But after like about 20 minutes, I completely forgot that it was actually, you know, like CG implementation, all that sort of thing. So I'd say that is really why I feel it's the best use of visual effects and the best, well, craftsmanship of visual effects to come out this year. Anywho, let's get on to our next nominee, which is... Best Makeup Effects. Alright, so the next category we'll be going on to is Best Makeup Effects. The nominees are Joker, Captain Marvel, Little Women, Judy, and The Irishman. Alright, now, the winner for Best Makeup Effects goes to... Jesus Christ. This year I actually stamped the envelopes properly, I guess. Dang. The winner for Best Makeup Effects goes to The Irishman, also. So, it's a bit weird having 2 in 1 this year. But this is it's sort of an extension of the last award in the sense of, like, how it's used for story. Because the VFX were more for, like, the earlier bits, like the younger age versions of the actors. Whereas the makeup is more for the latter half. And, again, it's one of those cases where I really did not have a moment, like, seeing, like, the makeup as the older versions of themselves where it's like, oh, it's just, like, a bunch of makeup. Like, I genuinely felt like seeing an older version of these characters for, like, the scenes that they were on screen for. And that's why, even there were some pretty interesting uses of makeup effects, like, I think, even for as sparse as it was, I think some of the designs in Joker for, like, the makeup and sort of the costume design was very interesting. But I feel like none of them have been as integral as The Irishman was. And, yeah, it's just funny that there was 2 in 1. Sorry about that. But anyways, let's get on to our next nomination. Some more technical stuff, by the way. We're going to get through all the technical stuff first, as we do every year. The next award is Best Costume Design. Now, we're going to be going on to Best Costume Design. Nominees are Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Dolomite Is My Name, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Little Women, Rocketman, and The Irishman. There's a lot of mans in this one today. Alright. And the winner for Best Costume Design is Rocketman. Now, this was a bit of a hard one too because there were some interesting ones in here. There's a lot of period piece dramas like Little Women, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and there's some really interesting ones in there too like Joker. But I feel Rocketman was the most interesting because it is also kind of a period piece of, you know, the 70s, not as much of like the Victorian-esque era like some of the other picks were. But this one was the one that used costume design in a really effective kind of like expressionistic sort of way because, you know, it's very theatrical and, you know, the costumes that they have for like Elton John's character during his performances are obviously great. but using kind of like the sort of exaggerated elements, even for like the just regular real life sequences that are more kind of fantastical, are really interesting, honestly. And I think there's like some very subtle decisions in costume design, like the moments where he's stripping down from his kind of devil-esque costume in the beginning of the film to how it shows up later in the film. I won't say specifically, but if you've seen it, you know what I mean. There's just like little tiny like intricacies that make it more interesting to me than, you know, a very, very well-tailored period piece drama. It's something a little bit more than just a period piece film. And that is why it is my personal pick for best costume design. Alright, next we have best production design. Best production design. The nominees are The Lighthouse, Little Women, A Hidden Life, The Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Alright. And the winner, for best production design goes to... Jesus Christ, come on. Goes to A Hidden Life, the new Terrence Malick film. Now, this was kind of an interesting one. It's not as obvious as some of the other picks, because, you know, production design is another case of, like, if you got a period piece film, it's obviously got to be that. And, again, this is a period piece film, but it's much more minimalistic in why I think its production design works. Like, the sets are very, very beautiful, and the way that they're constructed give it a very naturalistic element. But one thing a lot of people don't really take into consideration about production design is something like location scouting and that sort of thing. That is technically like the production design to some extent, where you're going to put your sets. And this film was honestly probably like the first time in quite a while it was like, wow, those locations are amazing. And it's not just that they're beautiful, they really evoke kind of the atmosphere of the film, kind of the style that Terrence Malick is usually known for. And it's very well implemented, because once you have that first half of the movie taking place in these very lush sort of backdrops, and then you have the prison sequences, which have very minimal elements of set in there, you know, besides like a chair, table, that sort of thing. It really is such a brilliant contrast, and some of it may be helped with the cinematography, but I think just the way the set isn't constructed in general, and some locations that they chose for it, are really why it was one of the first times where like the production design really affected me in a film for this year, at least. Alright, now on to the sound category nominations with sound mixing. Now we're getting into the sound-based ones. This is going to be an interesting one. For best sound mixing, the nominees are Us, the movie Us, not Us. We're not nominated for anything. Long Day's Journey into Night, The Lighthouse, Ad Astra, Ford vs. Ferrari, and Joker. Alright. And the winner for best sound mixing goes to Long Day's Journey into Night. Now, this is sort of an odd one, mainly just because it hasn't really been seen by a whole lot of people, but it was one of the most interesting uses of sound this year, in my opinion, because it kind of really evokes sort of like older sort of art house style of films like Tarkovsky and that sort of thing, but it's put in the setting of sort of like a neo-noir film, and it's just really interesting because this movie is more known for like the visuals. That's the thing that most people that have seen the film have really talked about, is like all the cinematography. But the way that sound is implemented is really, really interesting. Like, one scene specific is when there's like a very emotional conversation going on between two characters where the protagonist sort of learns something very like key to what is going on in his life. And you hear the sound of like kind of a waterfall-esque dripping across the walls that you don't really see, but you can hear, and it adds something very specific to it. And it's not really the kind of thing that you would get from like a conventional sort of neo-noir-esque thriller. God, sorry for my diction today. But it's really interesting, and just like the levels that they use for this film are probably why it works so well. Like, just the quiet atmosphere it has, and it's overall just like a brilliant ambiance, and that's why I personally feel it has some of the best sound mixing of the year. Anyways, time for the second sound award of the night, sound editing. Now, the nominees for best sound editing. The nominees are Us, The Irishman, Avengers Endgame, Rocketman, Ad Astra, John Wick 3, Parabellum. I don't know what Parabellum means, but it sounds cool. Alright. Now, the winner for Best Sound Editing goes to... Let me get this opened up, please. Ad Astra. Now, it's sort of interesting because last year I also chose a space movie for sound editing, and I was thinking to myself when I was making this choice, like, that's kind of lame to just do another space movie. But there's a much different sound to this film than there is, like, First Man. First Man's very much grounded in the, like gritty reality of, like, the situation and sort of the sounds that you hear from there. And while there's some element of that, there's much more of a fantastical element here, as it's more of, like, a sci-fi epic. But the way that sound is used is very, very purposeful, especially in, like, the later half of the film. There's so much, like, brilliant kind of atmosphere that's created from it. Especially, I don't remember exactly what it was like, but there's a sequence in the film where they go to this very desert-like planet. I don't remember if it's Mars or what it was that they said specifically. But, like, the ambiance that you get from just the sound of it and, like, the sounds of the interiors of some of the spaceships are really what makes it interesting in, like, the use of sound effects. But really, the ending is what makes it the most interesting to me. So that is why it is my personal pick for Best Sound Editing of the Year. Alright, now we're getting into the bigger technical awards for this year, with the first being Best Editing. Now we're getting into the bigger kind of technical categories. For Best Editing, nominees are Portrait of a Lady on Fire, edited by Julian Lacarre; The Last Black Man in San Francisco, edited by David Marks; The Lighthouse, edited by Louis Ford; Marriage Story, edited by Jennifer Lame; Parasite, edited by Yang Jin-mo; and The Irishman, edited by Thelma Schoonmaker; and Knives Out, edited by Bob Duce. Yes. Alright. And the winner for Best Editing of the Year goes to The Last Black Man in San Francisco, edited by David Marks. Now, this was a hard one. Like, you've got freaking Thelma Schoonmaker, the editor of many Martin Scorsese movies. You've got Parasite. You've got a lot of great stuff in here. But the main reason I chose this film, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, is because there's a simplicity to some of the editing in it, but there's a lot of personality that's also in it through just these very little decisions, like the way there'll be a jump cut in a certain sequence, or just very little tiny editing decisions that give it a lot more personality and much more of its own specific style than you would just like a regular sort of drama and something like that. Something that may not be as tightly wound together as something like The Irishman or Parasite, but there's something that is really just kind of enjoyable to see about a new style being created. And also there's just some brilliant montages within the film, just from like the opening alone. I think the opening is what sells it for me the most. Everything else is also like just as good as that, though. And that is why it is my personal pick for Best Editing of the Year. Next category, we've got one of my favorites and one of the hardest to choose most of the time, Best Cinematography. Now we're getting into Best Cinematography, as I said last time. Nominees are Portrait of a Lady on Fire, shot by Claire Mathan; Midsommar, shot by Paul Pogorzelski. Yeah, that's how you say it. The Last Black Man in San Francisco, shot by Adam Newport-Pera; Long Day's Journey into Night, shot by, this is going to be a bad one, Yao Hung-ai, Dong Jing-sung, and David Shazalet. The Lighthouse, shot by Jern Balshki; A Hidden Life, shot by Jorg Widmer; and The Irishman, shot by Rodrigo Prieto. Again, I apologize for my shitty pronunciations. I am a terrible human being, and you can call me an asshole in the comments below. Thank you very much. Anyways, the winner for Best Cinematography, Jesus Christ, this one's actually kind of hard to open. The winner is The Lighthouse, shot by Jarin Blashk. I think that's how you say it, at least. Okay, so a lot of these awards that I said were kind of hard picks. This one was the easiest, honestly, for me. There is no competition whatsoever that this is my favorite cinematography of the year. It's just so specific in the atmosphere, the style, the kind of texture of the whole film, that it's kind of one of the few things that really makes it work as well as it does, because it is a film that takes place during it's a period film. It's a period film in sort of the late 1800s, but it's kind of more evocative of like the 40s, like kind of 40s-esque films of like Greg Toland and that sort of thing, and some of the silent era too. And most films that try to evoke a different era are just like, digital camera and put down, the new aspect ratio on it to make it work. But this goes all the way through, just like the shadows, the way that every single shot is composed. It's just brilliant. It is honestly some of the best cinematography of the decade, in my opinion. And it's really honestly integral to the story, because the aspect ratio is not even just there for, the time period evoking the old age. It's so specific in like the claustrophobic atmosphere that this entire film creates of being stuck on that little lighthouse island. It's just so perfect. I could gush about it forever, but we've got a lot of other things to get to go, so let's do that first. Anyways, on to our next nomination for Best Score. Now we're getting into Best Score. The nominees are Uncut Gems, scored by Daniel Lopatin. Motherless Brooklyn, shot by Daniel Pemberton. The Last Black Man in San Francisco, scored by Emile Mosseri. Midsommar, scored by Bobby Kurlik. Marriage Story, scored by Randy Newman. The Farewell, scored by Alex Weston. And Glass, scored by Wes Dillon Thordson. Alright. Also, yes, I know I said shot by Daniel Pemberton. You can call me a dumb bitch in the comments below yet again. Anywho, the winner for Best Score goes to Uncut Gems, scored by Daniel Lopton. Anyways, sort of a comeback, honestly, because he was nominated in our first awards for Good Time, which was really, really great. But, Phantom Thread was there, so we couldn't really pick that. But this year, like a lot of people who start out with, like, film scores seem to kind of have sort of a samey feel after some point, I feel. That's because I felt the same thing about, like, Stephen Price with Gravity. But this is really, like, an amazing evolution of, like, the style that he started off with in Good Time, because that one was more like, yeah, it's pretty much kind of like Tangerine Dream, it seems, for the most part. But this is something much more than just that. It's like a mixture of that and, like other composers that use, like, the electronic type of score, like Vangelis, basically kind of a little bit of the Akira soundtrack, and just a whole bunch of other things that make it a really, really unique sound this go-around. It is something that kind of combines, like, loads of different emotions, but makes it kind of... It's a very kind of strange way that they work together, because in, like, the first few opening scenes, there's a very horrific sort of, like, string-esque style to it when it's showing, like, the opening shots and whatnot. And then there's a much more kind of rhythmic element to it later on, but there's just so many elements of it that I find really fascinating, and that last piece is really great, especially since it kind of reminds me a little bit of Blade Runner. But it's not even just that it reminds me of other pieces of work, it's a lot of things about it, a lot of references and stylistic influences that make it really unique. And there's some other ones that I was very much kind of considering, like Midsommar was great, but The Fire Temple was mainly kind of the peak in my opinion. But this one has so many just pieces that keep growing on me with time, and that's why it's my personal pick for best score of the year. Now, we are getting into some of the more movie-specific kinds with best documentary. Here it is. Yeah, best documentary. The nominees are Knock Down the House, director Rachel Lears, Midnight Family, directed by Luke Lauridsen. It's not me, it's a different Luke. Rolling Thunder Review, directed by Martin Scorsese. Apollo 11, directed by Todd Douglas Miller. Hail Satan, with a question mark, directed by Penny Lane. And American Factory, directed by Julia Reichardt and Stephen Bognar. Alright. And the winner for best documentary, Jesus Christ, this is probably the worst one yet. Okay, there it is. Alright, it's open now. The winner for best documentary is Midnight Family, directed by Luke Lauridsen. Now, I didn't pick it just because he has the same first name as me, but because it's a very, very fantastic documentary that is presented in a style that I kind of prefer more than just sort of the regular kind of talking head sitting at a little table style of documentary where it's mostly just interviews, because it's interviews while the characters, the subjects of the film, to say specifically, are doing their tasks, are doing their thing, like showing this family who are acting as this ambulance service in Mexico City, showing their everyday struggles, and just showing kind of like the little minutia of like what their jobs entail, and just like the little family struggles that kind of come from that. And it's just something that's so fascinating for how brief it is. It's not very long, only 80 minutes long, but it's very impactful and very telling without having to, give you a whole load of text explaining like the economic situation at the time. It's all, for the most part, shown through just the interactions, through like the visuality of it is why it works so well. And that's why I think it's more interesting, again, than like a documentary that's more just sitting talking about the subject matter rather than just showing it through kind of the flyby of the moment that you see every now and then. And that's why it's my personal pick for best documentary of the year. Now, next is best foreign language feature. Now on to best foreign language film. The nominees are Long Day's Journey into Night, directed by Bai Gan, Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho, Birds of Passage, Jesus Christ, directed by Cristina Gallego and Ciro Guerrero, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Céline Sciamma, Pain and Glory, directed by Pedro Almodovar, and Atlantics, directed by Mati Diop. Alright. And the winner for Best Foreign Language Feature is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Céline Sciamma. This was probably the second easiest one for me this year. The second easiest award to choose. Because just everything about this film is so beautifully done. So beautifully intimate and just detailed. And kind of almost, in a way, reminds me much of like a classic novel. Sort of in its approach, its pacing, and all that sort of thing. It's a movie about like the very individual moments, the interactions between the two main characters. And it's a very lovely, passionate film. And it definitely has probably the most impactful final shot of the entire year. It's so good. I'm kind of sad that you guys won't really be able to see it until next year, but luckily I was able to see it a little bit early. I won't boast about it now, but just really excited for everyone to be able to see it because it's amazing. Basically, kind of one of the closest to a perfect film I could think of. And it is the best foreign language film of the year, in my opinion. Now, getting on to Best Animated Film of the Year. We're getting into Best Animated Film of the Year. It wasn't the best year for animated films, but there's some good stuff in there, though. The nominees are How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, directed by Dean DeBois, Promare, directed by Hiroyuki Imashi, Toy Story 4, directed by Josh Cooley, Primal Tales of Savagery, directed by Genndy Tartakovsky, and I Lost My Body, directed by Jeremy Clapman. Alright. And the winner for Best Animated Film of the Year goes to Promare, directed by Hiroyuki Imashi. So, there wasn't a whole lot of interesting animated films this year, but being able to see this film in the theater was kind of an insane experience, honestly. This is a film that reminds me of, like, just some of the joys of the medium of animation. Just the crazy action sequences, the amazing, like vibrant color work, just the detail within the animation, even within some really crazy elements of the story. And also, yeah, the story. The story is not really, like, anything to write home about, but it's just so perfectly batshit insane that it is just a joy to watch from beginning to end, full way through. And yeah, it's really just a wonderful film. And it's also amazing to see the first film by the studio, Trigger Studios, being able to be such a really well realized first feature. Because, you know, some studios kind of start off not great, I could probably imagine, because animation's not the easiest place to put your money into. But this one was just something that's such a wonderful experience, and if you can see it in the theater, absolutely do so, because it's fucking nuts. Alright, now, on to our next category, Best Debut Film. The nominees now for Best Debut Film are The Report, directed by Scott Z. Burns, Toy Story 4, directed by Josh Cooley, Atlantics, directed by Matty Diop, Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde, and The Last Black Man in San Francisco, directed by Joe Talbot. Alright. And the winner for Best Debut Film goes to The Last Black Man in San Francisco, directed by Joe Talbot. Just, you know, it's surprising that it's a debut. It feels like someone who's been creating, like, their own unique style of a film for, like, years upon years now, and this is just their first film. They just started off. And it may not be, like, perfectly just, you know, aligned. It's not, like, again, like, as I mentioned, like, it's tightly wound up as something like Irishman, Parasite, and that sort of thing, but just like, the little decisions here and there, like the use of the camera within this film, some really beautifully framed shots, and just, like, a film that's kind of, it's great to see a film that uses its setting as a character as well, and it's so well realized to that extent that it makes it so much more interesting. And also just directing some great performances by some people who, from what I understand, aren't really, like, haven't been in anything all that well known or anything like that. They may even be first timers, but everything in it for a debut film is just so, like, impressive to me, honestly. And it is why it is my personal pick for Best Debut Film of the Year. Next, we have Best Independent Feature. we got Best Independent Feature of the Year, a film made as an independent production, so like something under $10 million, I'd say, is kind
like
of
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes, the best independent film of the year.
Yes, have you met my granddaughter?
Yeah, no. Is it like Ray of Sunshine or something?
She should have had better writing.
Probably. More like better rating. Haha. Anyways, the nominees for Best Independent Feature are The Farewell, directed by Lulu Wang, A Hidden Life, directed by Terrence Malick, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, directed by Joe Talbot, The Lighthouse, directed by Robert Eggers, Honey Boy, directed by Alma Harrell, and Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde. Alright. And the winner... Oh god, this is going to be a tough one to open. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry for my incompetence. Anyways, the winner for Best Independent Feature of the Year is The Lighthouse, directed by Robert Eggers. Now, just really fun to get, like, a very specific experience in film sometimes. Like, you know, when you go to a Martin Scorsese film, you expect, you know, like, kind of either one of two things, like a crime film or a very, like, beautifully constructed religious epic. But Robert Eggers has created almost, like, the terrifying mental horror film for like a new generation of people to see now, because it's just so specific in the little quirky choices, like for a horror film, how funny it is, like just the acting between Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, just brilliant. All, like I mentioned again, cinematography, the little bits of editing choices that create sort of a cerebral element to it, but also create that beautiful sense of atmosphere, the sound, production design, literally every element. I don't know why I said literally like that. I apologize. But anyways, just, it's something that really doesn't feel like it's an independent feature. I would have, like, imagined, like, a $20 million budget. This had, like, 4 somewhere in that general area. And that goddamn blows my mind. And you might say, like, it's, you know, 2 actors and the location, but just the confidency in the direction, the confidency in the tonal shifts just from one scene to the next scene, and even just from an interaction with the characters, it's all brilliantly realized, and that is why it's my personal pick for Best Independent Feature of the Year. Alright, we're getting into the really big ones now. We've got the Screenplay Awards, and then we'll be having the Acting Awards, Director Awards, then the Best Picture up very soon. But first, we've got Best Adapted Screenplay. So we're going to start off with Best Adapted Screenplay. The nominees are A Hidden Life, which was screenwritten by Terrence Malick, Dark Waters, screenwritten by Mario Correio, Matthew Michael Carahan. Luce, screenwritten by J.C. Lee and Julius Ona. The Irishman, screenwritten by Steven Zaillian. Little Women, screenwritten by Greta Gerwig. And A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, screenwritten by Micah Fitzmerton-Blue and Noah Harpster. Alright. And the winner for Best Adapted Screenplay goes to The Irishman, written by Steven Zaillian. Now, I mean, it's Scorsese, so, I mean, yeah, of course it has an amazing script behind it, but it's so much more the fact that, like, for a film that wasn't really written by Scorsese, it feels very specific to a lot of his kind of interests and, like thematic kind of discussions that he's had in many of his previous films. Of course, it's a mob movie, and there's that, but just the way that he deals with it, the way that he deals with the aspects of time and, like, the religious elements near the end of the film, and that very bleak kind of nihilism that you feel by the end of it is just so brilliantly realized, and also just dealing with the elements of history, crime, but it's much more simple than that. It's much more about, like, the ideas of betrayal and sort of the kind of like what the mob will take away from you by the end of your life, and those sort of ideas that are really interesting and make it so much more than just, like, another Martin Scorsese movie. It's like it's like the capstone of his whole career, which is what makes this script in particular probably my favorite of his entire career, the one that of all the films that he's chosen to direct, like, of all the screenplays he's chosen to direct, this is probably my personal favorite. And that is why it is the best adapted screenplay of the year. Now, on to Best Original Screenplay. Now we got Best Original Screenplay. Excuse me, I'm going to burp for a second. Sorry. Now, the nominees are Marriage Story, screenwritten by Noah Baumbach, Lighthouse, screenwritten by Robert and Max Eggers, The Farewell, screenwritten by Lulu Wang, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, screenwritten by Joe Talbot, Rob Reichardt, and Jimmy Fails, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, screenwritten by Céline Sciamma, and Parasite, screenwritten by Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won. Alright. And the winner for Best Original Screenplay is The Farewell, written by Lulu Wang. I actually found out it was pronounced Wang recently, and so I kind of feel like a terrible person for that too. I apologize. Anyways, The Farewell is a freaking amazing screenplay, and it's one of those things where you know it is a very personal screenplay to the person who wrote it, of course, because of how, some of the specific elements of it, but just, the marketing behind it made it very much apparent how these things were kind of influenced, or I guess inspired more is the correct term, by elements of her own life. And this was one of the, and that's something that's really hard to do right, I'd say. It's very easy to do sort of like a general drama film, but doing something on your own life can be some of the most taxing writing, and I can say that from my own experience, but that's not just the reason why I find it so good. It's so good because there's just, again, those little specificities that make it great. That's what I like about most of the categories I've been talking about that have won. The specificity of it, with like the family and the interaction between them and the way that they see culture differently between America and China, and the generational elements of it, and just the wholeheartedness of it too. Like, it is a very wholehearted film through and through, even through kind of like the more colder, sadder moments. There's still that element to it. It's so beautifully realized, and that is honestly why it's my favorite of the original screenplays of the year. Yeah, the original screenplays. Anywho, now getting on to the acting awards, we have Best Supporting Actress. Now we got Best Supporting Actress of the Year. The nominees are Octavia Spencer in Luce, Billie Lourd in Booksmart, Zhao Shuzhen in The Farewell, Adele Haenel in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Taylor Russell in Waves, and Park So-dam in Parasite. Alright. And the winner for Best Supporting Actress, if I can get this fucking thing open. Alright, there we are. The winner for Best Supporting Actress is Adele Haenel for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Now, for anyone who's already seen the movie, you probably know one scene in particular that makes this performance so amazing. I won't say what it is, but there's a specific scene that's, brilliant. And yes, that scene is amazing, but the thing that really makes it hit home, though, is everything beforehand. Kind of the nice restraint in the performance, and just the little interactions. Those little interactions just make it so much more impactful and so much more beautifully done. And it is very much like a performance that you're not going to be like, oh, I remember all these different scenes, and it's not emotionally explosive all the way through, but everything in between is just like these little brilliant, little beautiful moments that leads to kind of this amazing powerhouse. And that is honestly why it's probably my favorite supporting actress performance of the year. Alright, now we're getting into Best Supporting Actor. Now, for Best Supporting Actor of the Year, which is unfortunately not Emperor Palpatine.
Damn it.
Sorry. It really be...
Execute Order 66.
No, I can't. I don't know how to. I don't have any authority. You're the one with the authority. Anyways, the nominees for Best Supporting Actor are Joe Pesci in The Irishman, Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse, Song Kang-ho in Parasite, Shia LaBeouf in Honey Boy, Jonathan Majors in The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and Tom Hanks in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Alright. And the winner for Best Supporting Actor of the year goes to Willem Dafoe for The Lighthouse. Alright, so there was a lot of great performances this year, a lot of amazing performances, and some of you might have like easy labels to put them under, like, this was like a heartfelt performance that made me cry, or this was such like a engrossing performance that was like keeping me engaged and was like a powerhouse. This is a performance that left me awestruck. I was, just from like the first few moments, was like, this is like a great performance, but there's everything once you know what is going on in this film. This performance is kind of unbelievable. It shocks me to like an insane degree. There's so many scenes, like everyone talks about the monologue sequence, but there's so many other scenes. Just like how Willem Dafoe like flips his character from one scene to another, and just the way that his character is manipulating Robert Pattinson's character. And it's in the script, of course, but what he uses the written word for, how he uses it, is so like amazing. It adds so much depth to the script, in my personal opinion, because like the script by itself is amazing, but what Willem Dafoe brings to it is amazing. Just 10 out of 10 amazing performance. And honestly, it's probably one of my favorite horror performances in some time. It is. There's one shot in particular where I kind of forgot it was Willem Dafoe, and my only emotion was genuine terror. Genuine terror. Alright. Now we got the nominees for Best Actress. Now the nominees for Best Actress are Florence Pugh in Midsommar, Noémie Merlant in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, Alfre Woodard in Clemency, Awkwafina in The Farewell, and Ana de Armas in Knives Out. Alright. And the winner... Oh my god, excuse me, sorry. The winner for Best Actress... Oh my fucking god.
You'll get it eventually.
Soon. Fuck my hands, man. Jesus Christ. This was like I didn't want to have to put so much tension in this one. Alright, so, the winner for Best Actress goes to Awkwafina for The Farewell. Now, Willem Dafoe's performance was like all over the place with emotions that's very present right there. That is something that's very obvious for that film. This was a performance where everything is sort of subtextual and sort of not very present. It's not like a kind of film where everyone is blurting out the emotions and making it very obvious how they're feeling. This one is, you kind of have to lean in a little bit more to get the little subtleties of just like the sort of sadness that's going on with this character throughout most of this film, knowing the secret that she has to keep throughout the entire film. And it's just from those little bits of expression. It's not like a whole lot, and some people might even say it's a bit, dry, but I think it's really what makes it really add up. And then the scenes where she does actually like become like very more emotional and is more like expressive about it, it lands so much better. It's kind of like Adele Hanel's performance, much more like that, but in a very different way, because there's much more of those moments of release, but you know what's going on behind the scenes of this character that's making it really, really much more fleshed out than any just kind of regular drama or anything like that. And that is why it's my personal favorite performance for a leading actress in 2019. Alright, now we've got the Best Actor Award. For Best Actor of the Year. Sorry, my voice cracked for just a second. Jesus. The nominees are Kelvin Harrison Jr. in Luce, Adam Driver in Marriage Story, Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse, Robert De Niro in The Irishman, Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, and Noah Jupe in Honey Boy. Alright. And the winner for Best Actor goes to Adam Driver. Sorry, just wanted to fuck with you guys there. My apologies. Adam Driver for Marriage Story. Yeah, there was a lot of great lead performances this year. I mean, Adam Sandler was also one of them. Noah Jupe was one of them. Pretty much everyone in there was amazing and definitely worth the nomination, I would say. But Adam Driver's was something that hit on such a personal note, on such a personal way. And he is great in just, like, every single scene he's in. It's not, like, in your face what the emotion is, but you really feel, like, sort of the struggles that he's going through as his character progresses through just the decline of his relationship. And then, there's the scene that everyone talks about, the argument scene. I won't go into specifics of it because it's kind of a spoiler. But, yeah, that scene is as good as everyone says it is. And it was shocking. It was, like, weirdly shocking because everyone knows that an argument scene will probably be happening in a story about a family being divorced. But, like, the genuine, like, the sincerity behind it is what really lands emotionally for me, I'd say. And it's both, like, kind of restrained, but also vulnerable, like, when it needs to be. It's not just completely, like, vulnerable all the way through, maybe a bit too much emotion, or not, or maybe even just, like, cold and not showing, like, no emotion at all. It knows just when to kind of rank up the emotion for the audience, and that's why it's my personal favorite lead actor performance of the year. Now, we've only got two more awards left for tonight. The penultimate award, or is penultimate the one before? I'm just gonna call it the penultimate one and hope I'm right. Anyways, for Best Director of the Year. The nominees now for Best Director are Noah Baumbach for Marriage Story, Robert Eggers for Lighthouse, Céline Sciamma for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Joe Talbot for The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Terrence Malick for A Hidden Life, Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, and Lulu Wang for The Farewell. Alright. And the winner for Best Director of the Year goes to Robert Eggers for The Lighthouse. Now, again, as I've said, so much specificity in production design, actors, cinematography, all that, and probably the best directed horror film of the decade, honestly, in my opinion. Just so much of the performances, so much of those beautiful, like, changes in tone, so much brilliant detail, so much brilliant little details. And the fact that they basically made a buddy comedy film, or as I like to call it, a gay comedy film, about sailors that is also a horror film is kind of, honestly, a miracle, and for how good it is, we really do not deserve it, I'd say, in my personal opinion. Now, the last nominee of the night, I'm a little bit out of focus there, we go. Yeah!
I found you eventually.
Basically. The last award of the night, Best Picture. We've got one last nominee, or as Palpatine would probably call it,
The final nominee.
Yes, thank you very much. No, I will nominate. The nominees for Best Picture are The Irishman, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Uncut Gems, Parasite, A Hidden Life, Knives Out, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, The Lighthouse, Marriage Story, Honey Boy, The Farewell, and Midsommar. Alright. And the winner for Best Film of 2019 is Cats. No, I'm just kidding. It's The Lighthouse. Producers Rodrigo Teixeira, Jay Van Hoy, Robert Eggers, Laurie St. Anna, and Yuri Henley. All producers. Alright, so I've said this film, like, so many times now, you're probably tired of it, but, like, I just can't get over it. It's such a brilliant horror film, and it's one of those things where, I'll try to say something new this time. It's an experience that I don't know if I'll ever really see anything like it again in the cinema and the theater, whatever you like to call it. There's certain films that give you a very specific experience, like, when I joked about Cats is a very specific experience. I don't know how everyone else feels about that. But this one is something in that vein of just a very specific kind of film. Something that you may never see like it again. And there's so much detail. And I feel like there's so much more to it than just being a horror film. like, just like a Lighthouse kind of ye old horror film. There's a lot about its story that you could see in so many different ways. It's not just, oh, dude's going crazy on a lighthouse. You can look at it so many different ways, and it's not just a bunch of nonsense. It's really such a thoroughly engaging film. I don't know, like, how this film became my favorite so easily, honestly, because there's so many great films this year. It's insane, like, so many great films that you probably just saw from, like, the nominees I mentioned. But this one is something I think I could watch over and over again and come back to every time, just feeling as, like, invigorated and laughing as much as I did and being kind of terrified, genuinely, as much as I did. And that is why it is my personal pick for best film of the year. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. And oh wait, just kidding, one last award of the night, because we got a new thing this year going on, which is the audience awards pick, in which I sent out a poll about a day ago asking what everyone's pick for the best film of the year was from the nominees list, of course. And let's get those results up, if I can actually find it again. God. This is funny, ha ha ha, I'm sorry. Oh wait, no, the wrong app. Sorry for the wait on this. Just imagine.
Man, what a build-up.
Just imagine this as like the worst like opening an envelope sequence ever, and you'll get basically that. All right. Jesus Christ, load the fuck up already. All right. Now I'm gonna go on it from the least amount of votes to the most amount of votes. With one. Okay, so actually, wait, no, sorry. We have currently 29 votes up in the poll, and with one vote, we have Midsommar, The Farewell, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and Knives Out. With 2 votes, we have The Lighthouse and The Irishman. With 3 votes, we have Portrait of a Lady on Fire. With 4 votes, we have Marriage Story. And with a whopping 14 votes is Parasite. Parasite has become the audience award for Best Picture of the year. Congratulations. We've got a lot of really, like, amazing winners this year, and I actually really like the audience award pick. But it wasn't surprising considering basically everyone I've talked to loves Parasite amazingly. And so that's the 2020 J3 Film Awards.
Woo! Yeah,
we did it, guys. A new decade. Let's see if we can survive it, I guess. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a wonderful experience, and I'm excited to see what new films will be coming out next year, like 1917, which I didn't add on this list. Sorry, I just didn't really feel like adding it on there yet. Maybe next year. Anywho, it's been a lovely time. Do you have any last words?
Sure.
My good man?
I'll come up and talk just for a second, because I spent the time setting up my webcam to use it for 5 seconds during the whole event. But yeah, I just think I want to say I started off this year going like, I wasn't a huge fan of the 2018 movies. There are a couple that I thought were good, but there wasn't a whole lot that really hit me on a personal level. Then 2019 started. There was some good films early on that like, oh, okay, that I like it a lot. But nearing the end, I was kind of worried, and then I started catching up on some that I missed, and I've come around to the point where I think 2019 was a phenomenal year for movies. Really far better than I thought it was going to be going into the year. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen all of your picks for all the categories, but I've seen a good amount of them, and I can agree with a lot of them. But yeah, I felt very good about this year, so here's to hoping that 2020 is just as good, if not better.
Yeah. And I'll see you guys around soon in the next year. Take care and have a lovely, lovely night.